Hello, my name is Joanne Seward, and I'm the Technical Services Librarian at the Oak Creek Public Library. Thank you for viewing this second video in the series, Office for Beginners. Today's topic is Microsoft Excel. So, spreadsheet programs allow users to develop a number of spreadsheets that can be used for both professional and personal use. Users can store data, perform calculations, and display values or figures graphically. A spreadsheet may be used to calculate the earnings of business products for the year, or simply may be used to keep track of monthly bills. Microsoft Excel allows you to create both professional and personal files that can help organize and analyze data, as well as present information graphically in chart or graph format. So the objectives, this is what we're going to focus on specifically in this video. We're going to learn the basic navigation skills to effectively use the Microsoft Excel program. We're going to create and edit a simple spreadsheet, format the spreadsheet, and perform a calculation. We're going to create and move a chart. And then lastly, we'll talk about print, save, and open. So to begin, we need to open Microsoft Excel. One of the ways that we can do that is going to the Start menu down here at the bottom left-hand corner and clicking on Start and going to the All Apps. So if you click on All Apps, it'll give us an alphabetical list of every single app or program that's installed on this computer. So we're looking for Excel, so we go to the E's, and here it is. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Excel 2016 is the version that we're using. And we come to the startup screen. So just as a reminder, if you've watched the previous Microsoft Word video, the startup screen, there are three main reasons that it comes to the startup screen, three main things that you can do from this screen. You can open other workbooks, so things that you have worked on previously. You can start something totally from scratch, so a blank workbook. Or you can use an online template, and we'll talk more about templates in the publisher class. So for today, I'm just going to start simple, and we're going to do the blank workbook. So if I click once on blank workbook, it opens it up. And let's talk about the parts of the window. So once again, this is a slight review if you have watched the Word video. So we still have the ribbon is going all the way across the top right here. Okay. It's an entire top section with all of our options. We have the tabs. We have File, Home, Insert, Page Layout, Formulas, Data, Review, and View. Some of these might sound familiar as to what you've seen already in Microsoft Word, like File, Home, Insert, Page Layout, Review, and View are actually all the same. There might be some different groups in there that you might not see elsewhere, but a lot of the similar functions are in the same place. I like to point this out because it's just nice to realize that you're not just doing something 100% from scratch. So, all right, so we have the tabs. Underneath the tabs, it's split up into groups. So like for home here, the very first group is clipboard. So in clipboard, we have cut, copy, paste, and format painter. We have the font group. So everything that you want to do with font is in the font group. We have the alignment group, and so on and so forth. So the ribbon is the overarching entire thing. We have the tabs, and then it's split up into groups. Okay. So the pieces that are a little bit different. The very first thing underneath clipboard where it says A1 right here, this is called the address box. So the address box basically lets us know what the current cell is that we're in. In other words, if I started typing, I know that it would go into cell A1 because it's telling me that right there. Okay. To the right of there, we have the formula bar where it has this little FX and then this blank area. So the formula bar is one place that you can see where, what formulas you've actually used. We'll see an example of that later on when we do a calculation, and then we'll bring this back up so you can see it. Another thing that I use this for right here is to actually edit the text. So if I've typed a whole bunch of text in the cell, it's not super easy to go back and edit it. But you can actually edit the text in here. Once you click on the cell, it pops up here and then you can make changes. So, all right, underneath there we have the column headings. So the A, B, C all the way to U, and then if I scroll over, it goes to Z. And then you can see it starts over with AA, AB, AC. So it repeats that way all the way over to the right. All right, and then we also have the row heading. So on the left-hand side, we have the 1 through 23. And once again, if I scroll down, it gets even larger. Okay. At the very bottom left-hand corner right here, we have the sheet tabs. So you can have multiple sheets in a workbook. You can actually have up to, I think it's 255 worksheets if you really wanted. And then you can create new worksheets by clicking on this little plus sign. Basically think of it as a notebook. So the notebook is the entire thing, and then these sheets are just the individual pieces of paper in that notebook. So that's one way, except the pages are way large. So, all right. And then we have the status bar still at the very bottom right here, that gray kind of skinny bar going all the way across. And once again, the main thing in here is to point out is the zoom. So if I click on the plus sign, you'll notice that the cells, little boxes, see, get larger. Keep going, gets even larger. So you can zoom it in or zoom it out by clicking on the plus or the minus symbol. Okay, I'm going to leave it right there for now. All right, so that's just a review of the parts of the window. So let's talk about some key terminology that I've kind of already briefly mentioned. So the first thing is a workbook. So workbook is the standard file name for an Excel workbook, I guess you could say, an Excel spreadsheet. So Microsoft Word works in documents. Microsoft Excel works in workbooks, or books for short. Okay. As I mentioned, there are the worksheets down here at the bottom left corner. And so you can create new worksheets in here by clicking on the plus sign again. Okay. We have the columns I pointed out to you. The columns, just so you know, if you ever really wanted to know, there are 16,384 columns. So it goes way, way far over to the right. AKA, you'll never use all that space. All right. Same thing with the rows. Over here on the left, there are 1,048,576 rows. That is craziness. So with all of those added together, it means all of these individual cells, all of these little boxes, that there are over 17.2 billion cells in one worksheet alone. Once again, way more space than you will ever need in your entire lifetime, even if you put everything in an Excel file. So there we go. All right, address. Each cell has an address. The address is made up of the column letter followed by the row number. So for example, the cell that I'm in right now is A1. So it's the column and then followed by the row. Think of like bingo. You wouldn't say you wouldn't say 9A, you would say A9, like that. Okay. Home is used to refer to the first cell within the worksheet, which is A1 right there. Okay. Cell range. A group of cells is commonly referred to as a cell range. So if I click, hold, and drag and select these cells, this right here is considered a range. So my range is B3 through G3. So I have all of this range selected. Okay. If I click on a cell, it doesn't matter any one of these cells, it'll become unselected. And then you'll see every time that I've been clicking on a cell, this little green box pops up. This is called the active cell / the cell selector. So basically this is your visual cue so that you know that if you started typing, it's going to go right in that cell. All right, so those are some kind of basic terms to keep in mind when we're talking about Excel. Let's talk about some cursors. There are way more cursors with Excel than there are with any other programs, I feel like. So the main one we're going to see is this white block plus sign cursor. Okay, so this cursor basically lets you know that you can click on a cell, and it lets you know that you can select a range of cells. So like if I start here, E3, and let me go diagonally down to H11. There we go. So that's what this block plus sign cursor is for selecting cells. All right, let's talk about the next type of cursor for moving cells. So let me type in, let's just do ABCs. So if I wanted to move the contents of this cell to another cell, I can do that by using this cursor. If I go on any edge of this green active cell selector, but not the bottom right corner, we'll talk about that in a second. you can see it changes into that 4-arrow cursor, those 4 black arrows. If I click and hold down, I can drag this and move it to whatever cell that I want. So let's say I want it in A1. Boom. Okay. So you can see it took it away from the cell that it was in originally, and now it moved it into that cell that I just put it into. This is super helpful if you started typing something in and you have a lot of text, and then after the fact you realize that you actually did it in the wrong cell. It's very nice to be able to just quickly be like, oh wait, no, I meant it to be here. And then you can just quickly drag it over there. You can do this with multiple cells. So if I had a whole column of stuff typed, I could select all of the cells like this, click, hold, and drag, and then once again, I can use that green line and then move it to wherever I want to move it. So once again, let's go back to A1. There it is, okay? Just imagine that has text right there. All right, so to resize columns and rows, because you can see this ABC is already taking up almost half, not quite, of this cell. So you can imagine if you have something, you know, like somebody's first and last name or whatever, that it's going to be taking up more and more space as you type. So one way that you can do it is by going up in between the column headings. So if I move my cursor in between A and B, I get this cursor that has a line with 2 arrows pointing right and left. It's kind of a visual cue as to what you can do. If I click and hold down, I can drag this and I can make it as wide as I want to make it. Let's go like there. Okay. So you can see now column A is super wide, and then B, C, D, and all of those just shoved over to the right to make room for this. You can do the same thing on the left-hand side with the column, with the row headings. So I could go between 1 and 2, click, hold, and drag, and make it as large as I want. So let's go there. Okay. So now A1 is super huge because I made it larger by going to the right and by going down. So in between the column and the row headings is where you get that cursor so you can readjust the size. All right, the last type of cursor we're going to talk about is the copy cursor. So as I mentioned before, with moving cells, you didn't want to go to this bottom right corner because this is the copy cursor. So if I put my cursor right on there, you see it turns into this black plus sign. That's the copy cursor. If I click, hold, and drag it down, or I could go to the right, you know, I could go up, whatever. I'm going to let go. Ta-da, there it is. So you can see it took the contents of that first cell that I was on and then copied them to all of the cells that I did. So once again, this is a huge time saver if you are typing in something that has a lot of repetitive data. So if you're filling, like, let's say you're creating a address book for your family and friends. Well, obviously your family members are probably all going to have the same last name, or most of them will have the same last name. So then rather than having to type in the same last name every single time, you could type it once and then use the click, hold, and drag for the copy cursor and bring it down or over or whatever you needed. And it will copy that into those cells. Okay. All right, so those are the main types of cursors. You're all still gonna see this white arrow cursor, just like we did for Word. Just lets us know that we can choose any of these options up here in the ribbon. Okay. All right, so let's talk about how to navigate and select text. So in order to navigate around, obviously we can use our mouse. So if I wanted to go to cell H2, I move my cursor over there, click once, and then boom, there it is. There's the active cell. I can start typing, the end, okay? So obviously you can move by using your mouse and clicking on whatever cell that you want to go to. Another way that you can navigate is using the arrow keys. So if I press the down arrow key on my keyboard, I'm going to go down one. If I press the up arrow key, I'm going to go up one. Left arrow goes to the left, right arrow goes to the right. So these are kind of nice because it's just telling you right on the key exactly what it's going to do. So it's really easy. The other thing you can do, just as an FYI, you can press and hold down on them and it'll zoom over. So if I press and hold down on the left, went all the way over. If I press and hold down on the down button, arrow. So you can see it goes real quick. So if you need to get through a whole bunch, you can use those as well in that same way. Okay. All right, let me navigate over a little bit. Another main way that you will use is using enter. So if I press the enter key, it takes me down to the cell below. Think of it just like with Microsoft Word, when you typed a paragraph and you want to start a new paragraph, you would press enter and it moves you down to the next line. So it works in a similar fashion, okay? To move up, we have to use shift and enter. Shift is what I like to call the opposite key. So if I hold on shift and press enter, I moved up. If I hold on shift and press enter again, I move up, keep going, and so on, okay? Press enter, go down. All right, so to move to the right or left, to move to the right, I'm gonna press tab. So on the on the far left-hand side of your keyboard, there's tab. And remember, for Microsoft Word, when you press tab, it indents it in 1/2 inch so that you can start your paragraph, essentially. So it's moving the same exact direction as Microsoft Word. The only difference is it's moving one cell at a time. Okay? And then if I want to go to the left, which is the opposite, hint, hint, we're going to hold down shift and press tab. So I'm going to hold down shift, tab. There we go. Keep holding shift, keep pressing tab, and it'll keep moving me over to the left. So those are the three kind of main ways that I find are the most helpful to navigate around Excel: using your mouse, using the arrow keys on the keyboard, and using enter and tab, or shift and enter and shift and tab. Okay. All right, let's talk about how to select text. Just like in Microsoft Word, if I want to make any changes to my text, so like let's say I want to make these ABCs red or etc., I need to click, hold, and drag to select them in order to make those changes. Like if I go up here and click on the A for red, there you go, it's red, okay? So obviously we can do what I just did, which is the click, hold, and drag. And you can, if you go at a diagonal, it's gonna take all of the cells within that kind of box, okay? It can't choose like, you know, going just these ones on the diagonal, and it doesn't work that way. It just, you gotta imagine it's drawing an invisible, sort of invisible box as you go. Also, just as an FYI, this first cell will always remain white and then the rest of them will be gray. I think it's just a visual cue to let you know that this is where you started. So, all right, but if I click on any cell, it deselects them and we're back to being good to go to type or do whatever we want to do. Some quick ways to select cells, you can, or to select a whole bunch of cells, you can click actually on these column headings. So if I go on to B, for example, you see how my cursor has changed into this arrow pointing down? If I click once on there, you can see it selects all of column B. I could scroll down to the 1,448,000, whatever it was, row, and it would be selected all the way down. This is nice if you just want to do a kind of a blanket change, like I want to make everything in here bold without having to click, hold, and drag forever. You can do the same thing with the row headings on the left-hand side. So let's say I wanted to change row 4. If I go down to 4, you can see my arrow changes again, this time pointing to the right. Click on it, and now it's selected all the way over. I could keep going, and it would be selected all the way over. Okay. And once again, if I click off on any cell, they're all deselected. So there are lots of other little shortcut ways to move and or to navigate and select text, but those are the ones that I use the most common. Those are the most useful ones, okay? All right, so with those kind of basics covered, now we're gonna talk about how to create an actual spreadsheet. So rather than having to use undo, remember that arrow up here at the top left corner, we are going to just start by creating a whole new sheet. So I'm going to click on this plus sign to the right of sheet 1, and now I have sheet 2. And notice it's not zoomed in at all, it's at 100%. Column A isn't wider, row 1 isn't wider, there's no ABCs. So it didn't take any of this formatting stuff that we did or anything that was on this sheet and applied it to this one. It just created a whole blank new one for us, okay? I'm going to zoom in a little bit just to be able to see everything really clearly for you guys. So we're going to start in A1, and I'm going to type in monthly expenses. So this is the spreadsheet that we're creating today. I just pressed enter to take me down to A2, and I'm going to type in first quarter. Go. All right. So now I'm going to press the enter key twice. I'm going to go down to A3 then, and then A4. Just wanted a little bit of buffer before I actually start my actual spreadsheet. So these are more kind of titles is basically the way that you can think of it. So in A4, we're going to start with naming our actual column. So this is going to be expenses. And then I want to move over to the right. Sorry, I want to keep going down. We'll move over to the right in a minute. And I'm going to type in all of the expenses. So we're going to start with rent. That makes sense. We energies. And if you make a mistake, you can use backspace to delete it one at a time, etc. That's totally fine. If you have to go back onto one though, don't use backspace because it'll delete the entire thing. Here, watch. Oops, nope, we don't want to do that. So I'm going to do undo and bring it back. All right, so now that we have all the expenses in, now we're going to go to cell B4. So I'm going to click on cell B4 and I'm going to type in the month January. So we're going to do kind of a cool thing where we're going to auto populate the months. So we're going to use the copy cursor going to this bottom right hand corner of cell B4 and use click, hold, and drag, and we're going to go over to E4 is how far we want. So we want January through April, and then let go. And there we go. It's all in there, January, February, March, and April. So with the copy cursor, especially when it comes to dates and times, we'll do this kind of automatically. So for example, if I put in today's date, 9/4/2020, if I use the copy cursor and drag it down or to the right or up or wherever I want to do it, it will change the date to be the next or the previous date. So if I dragged it down, it would be 9/5 and then 9/6 and 9/7 and so on and so forth. So it's kind of cool, a nice little function that it does that. Okay, so next we're going to type in total over here in F4. So we get a total of all of the different expenses, the rent, the we energies, phone, groceries, etc. All right, I'm going to type in the values now. So give me 1 minute. Okay, so those are all of the values for January. And you would expect rent would probably be the same for all of these months. So rather than typing 650, clicking 650, 650, I'm going to use the copy cursor for this one as well. So I'm going to click, hold, and drag it over. There we go. Boom, 650 all the way across. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing with the phone because once again, the phone bill is another one that probably stays pretty consistent, hopefully. And I'm going to use the copy cursor, click, hold, and drag all the way over to the April and let go. And there it is. Okay, so we energies and groceries are a little bit less consistent, so I'm going to type those in. I'm going to press tab to get in between the different cells. And let's press enter to go down. Okay. And I'm going to do the grocery totals. And I'm just doing tab in between each of these. All right, and there it is. Okay, so you can see that we energies is getting cut off because it's too large to be able to fit in this cell and be able to see it. You can also see that monthly expenses is definitely going over into column B. So I'm going to use the resize cursor. If I go up in between A and B and I double click, you can see it automatically fit it to whatever the largest word or sentence is, which in this case is the monthly expenses. So it fitted it up so that it fits all of that text in this column. I could have done click, hold, and drag. I could, still do click, hold, and drag and make it however wide or not I want. But the double click is what's called auto fit. So it's just a quick, easy way for it to automatically fit all of your text in that space. Okay. Okay. So let's review, hopefully, if you have watched the Word video, how to save a file. So with save, we're going to go to File first up here at the top left-hand corner. And we have Save versus Save As. So save is what you do the very first time. However, notice when I click on Save, it goes to Save As. Tell it where to save it to and what name to save it as. So I'm going to click on Browse to choose a place. And I'm going to go to my flash drive right here. It's called That's the brand name, is the sent in USB. Sometimes it shows up as removable drive or removable storage, etc. So right now, the file name is book 1. And that's not exactly a very descriptive title. So I'm going to change it to like monthly expenses. That makes sense. There we go. So now that I have it saved where I wanted to, or located where I wanted to in the flash drive, and I have given it the name that I want to give it, now I click on save. All right, and now it is saved. So if I closed out of it, then I would still be fine. It would, I'd be able to open it right back up again. So just remember, as you work on things, as you, continue to work on things, and especially I find if I've worked on something for a while and then I get it finally the way that I really wanted to, make sure you save periodically. So if I go back to file and if I click on save this time, it just pops me right back here because it just saved it to the same place that I saved it to originally, okay? So save as is, if I go back to file, save as is if I wanted to like change the name of it right now, like save it under a different name, or if I wanted to save it to an additional different place. So I had it saved to the flash drive, but maybe I wanted to save it to my computer. So that's why you use save as. So save is the very beginning, the very first time that you save something. Save as is choosing a location or renaming something or choosing a different location to save it to. All right, so that's saving. So now we're going to talk about formula or calculation, whatever you prefer. There are tons and tons and tons of different calculations that you can do in Excel, and it gets very complicated. So if I go to this formulas tab right here, you can see these are the different kind of functions that they have. So there's financial, logical, text, date and time, math and trig. I mean, there's so many different ones. It kind of boggles my mind. And especially for somebody like me who's not very good at math, it's a little overwhelming. So we're going to stick with a more basic formula just so that you have a concept of how to do this. So for this one, we're going to do Autosum. So rather than adding up all of these numbers, like using a calculator and then having to type in the number manually, that's where Autosum comes into handy, So it's basically going to automatically sum or give us the total of the numbers. So you have to make sure with your whatever calculation or formula that you do that you're either underneath it or usually to the right of it, or you could be to the left of it technically too. Basically underneath wherever you want it to be, all of the numbers that you want it to be selecting. Okay, so up here in the editing group, I'm still in the home tab. So in the editing group, there's Autosum right here. I'm just going to click on this little down arrow just so you guys can see this. There are some other kind of common formulas like average, count numbers, max, min, etc. that is in here. But if I click just on this kind of weird looking E, I'm going to click on there and it populates the formula right there in cell B9 where I had selected. And you can see it says equals sum B5 through B8. So I know that it's taking B5, B6, B7, B8, and giving me the sum. And you can see I like to call these marching ants. See them around there? So these marching ants are also what I like to call picky eaters. So normally they do not like letters. They are only number fans. So even though January is right here, they're going to ignore that because they only want the numbers. The numbers are tasty for them. All right, so all I have to do, since I looked at this and it looks correct, I'm going to press enter. And there it is. There's my total. If I click back on here, so what I was talking about the formula bar before, here we go. If we look up here above the column headings, you can see it says equals sum B5 through B8, but the actual sum is 1,148.44. So if I had just typed in this number, then in the formula bar right here would say 1,148.44. But because I used a formula in this cell, it's showing me the formula. So that's kind of nice to know because if you ever click on a cell and you're like, oh wait, did somebody use a formula to get this number? You can see it in the formula bar right there. Okay. All right, so I could go underneath cell C9 and do the same thing, D9 and E9, etc. But I'm going to make my life easier again, and I'm going to go back and click on cell B9, and I'm going to use my copy cursor. So I'm going to go down to this bottom right corner and click, hold, and drag over to column E and let go. And there it is. And sometimes when I do things like that, I'm like, oh, I don't know if it really worked correctly. So I'll click on one of them just to make sure that it did. So like, let's go do the April one. So the total is $1,117.74. And if I look at the formula, it says equal sum E5 through E8. So it took E5, E6, E7, E8. Yes, that worked correctly. Okay. All right, so we're going to do the same thing over here on the right-hand side. So I'm going to click on Autosum again, and you can see it didn't go up because there's no nummy numbers for our marching ants. So they automatically wanted to go to the closest thing next to them that had numbers. So in this case, all of the rent. So it's taking the sum, or it's giving us the sum of B5 through E5, B5, C5, D5, E5. I press enter, there it is, 2,600. So I'm going to do the same thing and go back up onto F5, and I'm going to use the copy cursor and click, hold, and drag until I get to F9. And here we go. So this is the total of all of the totals. So $4,531.41 is what we spent this first quarter of the year, January through April. If you ever need to make a change, so like let's say you looked back at this and were like, oh wait, one of these numbers is wrong. You can very easily do so. So like let's say the We Energies bill right here in cell B6 is wrong. Instead of being 135.67, it needs to be 160.50. So I just started typing right over it. Oh, actually, sorry, that's the wrong one. All right, so I just did, if you do the undo, okay. So now let's go to the right one. So B6, so I'm going to change it to 150, oops, sorry, 160.50 and press enter. Notice all of these sums just changed, okay? So now the final sum is $4,556.24 that we spent, okay? All right, so that is an example of a basic formula. So let's talk about how to format values. Basically, in this case, formatting values in this spreadsheet basically means just making it look like money. Because right now, the numbers that we have right here don't look particularly like money, right? So we're gonna format it. And so this is not something that you have to do. It's just something for visibility for your own sake. Or if you're giving it to somebody else, like, you know, sending it to an employer or, you know, a coworker or whatever, and you want it to be really obvious, you can do this, okay? So I'm gonna do Control A to select all of the cells. And you can see that it selected just these and not these. That's because I was clicked actually in cell C7. If that ever happens and you really actually wanted every single thing to be selected, do Control A again. And notice now it's selected the entire workbook. So this entire worksheet, okay? So this entire thing is selected, okay? So now that I have the cell selected, I'm gonna go to the number group up here, number. And in here, you can see there's actually a little $sign. I'm gonna go ahead and click on the $sign. And then if I click on any cell to deselect them, and there you go. So you can see now we have $signs in front of every single one of these. And then there's also the decimals, you know, the periods and the decimals, okay? You might see sometimes, let me just do this real quick. Let me resize this so you get an idea. Okay, you see how now B9 is showing as pound, 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 or hashtag, or the number sign, or whatever you want to call it. It's doing that because it can't fit all of the text in here so that you can actually see it. So that's when you need to resize whatever you have. So I'm just going to double click between B and C, and now you can see everything that's in that cell, okay? So just want to point that out to you because the first time that happened to me, where I typed something in and I pressed enter and all of a sudden it changed from what I had typed in to all of these pound signs, I was very confused. So it just means that there wasn't enough space for you to actually be able to see everything in that cell, okay? All right, so let's talk about how to format cells. So all of this is basically making it look prettier is really ultimately what we're doing. So if you're trying to impress some people, you may want to do this. All right, so we're going to start with, just like with formatting in Word, once you type in the text that you have, you need to select that text in order to make changes. So in this case, I want to select A4 through A9. So I'm just going to click, hold, and drag and select all of those. And I want to make it bold. So in the font group right here, I'm going to click on the V. And there we go, it's bold. Okay. I'm going to click on any cell so that nothing is selected anymore. Let's select cells B4 through E4, just the months right here. I'm going to do something kind of cool with this one. In the alignment group up here, you can see this little symbol that has an AB with a slant and it says orientation. If I click on there, you can actually angle your text in different ways. I don't know if you knew that before. Pretty cool, huh? So I'm going to choose the angle counterclockwise just for fun. All right, and you see how January, February, March, and April, but not expenses and not total, have all changed, okay? So you can see the way that it angled it counterclockwise. Like I said, just a cool little thing that you can do. I'm going to select cells B9 through F9 right here. So these are all of the totals. And I'm going to change the font color to red. Because to me, red always means this money is gone. Bye-bye. So there you go. All right. And then the last thing I'm going to do is these titles. I want them to stand out more as actual titles. The main way that you do that in Excel is to use merge and center. So I'm going to select cells A1 over to F1 because that's as far as my spreadsheet currently goes. I'm going to go back to the alignment group right here, and here's merge and center. So if I click on merge and center, you can see it's gotten rid of all of those little lines, and it's basically what it's taken is made it into one big cell, and it's centered the text in that cell. Okay. So typically, like I said, with the merge and center, you only do that with the titles. Let's make this size 22. I'm going to click on the down arrow next to 11 and change it to 22, make it nice and large. I'm going to make this bold, so I'm going to click on the B in here in the font group, and there we go. And now I'm going to do the same thing with this first quarter. So I'm going to select cells A2 over to F2, once again going to the edge of my spreadsheet. I'm going to click on merge and center. And let's just change the size of this from 11 to, let's do 14, okay? All right, and there is my pseudo finished spreadsheet, okay? All right, to finish it completely, I'm gonna add borders just to add another additional little piece. So right now, if we look at this right here, just keep an idea of what this looks like in your brain. If I go to File and print it right now, this is what it's going to look like when it prints. Notice there's no column headings. There's no A, B, C, D, blah, blah, blah. There's no 1, 2, 3s. There's no actual lines, okay? Those are considered the grid lines, okay? We can make those print if we wanted to, but it's not something that prints by default. So this is a good example of where we would want to use borders to make the actual boxes that these cells are in stand out. So I'm going to click on the back arrow up here at the top left-hand corner to get back to this. And let's say that I want to have really stand out just the numbers. So I'm going to click, hold, and drag and select this range right here. So all of the numbers is what I just selected. And in the font group, this little square that's kind of divided into 4 pieces is the borders button. If I click on the down arrow, it gives you so many choices, guys. So many. You could do just the left border, the top border, no borders, outside border, thick outside borders. There's just a ton of choices. All right, but I'm going to keep it simple, and I'm going to go with all borders. And if I click off to the side, you'll be able to see it a little bit more. There you go. Okay. So if I go to File and Print again, now you can see those numbers are standing out much more clearly. Okay. All right. Perfect. So if I click on the back arrow again to go back. So now that we have done everything with our spreadsheet, now is a good time to actually create a chart. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit because the chart will go in here. Okay. All right. So the biggest piece of advice that I can give you when it comes to charts is make sure that you select the data that you want to be in the chart and that you don't select the data you don't want in the chart. So let's just do it and then you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to select cells A4 through E8 over here. So you can see I'm leaving out the totals. I don't want any of these totals in here because if I have the totals in my graph, it's going to really mess up how it looks. It's not, we're just looking for just the straight data basically, okay? We're also leaving out the titles, the monthly expenses and the first quarter, in this case, just because we don't really need it. So why even put it in there? So I only selected this data, which is what I actually want in the chart, and then I did not select the other data, which I don't want in the chart, okay? So I'm gonna go to the Insert tab up here at the top left corner, click on Insert, and in the Tables group, I'm gonna click on, oh, I'm sorry, what am I talking about? In the Charts group, we're not doing a table, we're doing the charts. In the Charts group, there are recommended charts, and then there are all these different types of charts that you can choose. There's lots of different kinds, okay? So the most kind of basic one that people are normally the most familiar with is the column or bar chart. So if I click on that one, and you can see it gives us kind of fancy options. We have the 2D column, we have the 3D column. You can see it gives you a little preview of what it's going to look like. We have the 2D bar or the 3D bar. So you can choose whichever one you like. Let me just point out these 3D ones. While the 3D ones seem really cool and, awesome, statistically as humans, we have issues reading those types of charts. So you might want to just go with a more standard 2D one, even if it seems boring, sorry. So I'm going to choose this very first one, which is the clustered column. If I click on there, and then there is my chart, okay? All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is actually move our chart because you can kind of see it's right on top of our data. I can move this, like if I go onto the chart, if just be careful when you're moving stuff. Make sure that you're on basically a blank area. So like up here at the top left or the right or the very bottom left or right. So you want to be on a blank area. If you click, hold, and drag, you can actually move the chart wherever you want on the actual worksheet itself. So that's one way that you can actually move this around. Another way that you might want to do, and that I like to do, is actually to move this and be its own separate tab down here. So with this chart title selected, we have what's called a contextual tab. So this design tab popped up right here, and it wasn't there before. The last tab used to be view. So the design tab showed up because we inserted this chart. So if I click on move chart in the location group right here, it gives me choices. So right now it's set as an object in sheet 2, but I can move it to a different sheet if I wanted. Or I can create a completely new sheet, and I could even change the name of it if I wanted from chart 1 to something else. In this case, that's fine. We're just going to leave it, click OK. And there is our chart. And you can see down here at the bottom left corner, if I go and click on sheet 2, it's gone. So it's not there anymore. We moved it completely to this chart 1 tab. Okay. All right, let's talk about adjusting the page layout. Adjusting the page layout is basically exactly the same thing that we did in Word. So at the very top left corner, we're going to go to the page layout tab. So we have the margins. Remember, the margins is that empty space on the top, bottom, right, and left. With Word, it was pretty straightforward because it was 1 inch around every side, around every edge. With Excel, it's a little bit different because you can see the top and bottom are 0.75, but for some reason the left and right are 0.7. Why it couldn't be exactly the same, I have no idea, but there you go. So that's the default, is this normal. Let's say that I wanted it to be narrow though, right? So the top and bottom are 0.75, they stay the same, but the left and right are 0.25. So if I click on there, you can see it kind of spread it out a little bit more, okay? Let's change the orientation. So if I click on orientation, so we have portrait and we have landscape. We have landscape right now is what it's set to the default because this is a chart. Otherwise, normally it defaults to portrait. So I'm going to click on portrait, and you can see now how it has changed this chart. Okay. All right, and the last thing we can change is the size. So the size of the paper. So we have 8.5 by 11, there's 8.27 by 11.69. We could go to more paper sizes and change other ones, etc. Okay, we're just gonna leave it that way for now. So we're gonna leave it the default, which is the 8.5 by 11. All right, so let's talk about printing. So if I go up to File, the top left-hand corner, and click on Print, here is what is going to print currently, okay? Notice the number of pages that it's going to print is down here at the very bottom. So it's only going to be printing one page right now, this chart that we put together. And you might be like, oh, where's the spreadsheet? We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so if everything looks good to you, that's when you would just click on this little printer symbol right here. Remember, copies, if I want multiples of this exact same thing, I can use the up arrow and I can change it, or I can use the down arrow. So you can make it however many copies that you need. The printer name is the name of the printer that you're actually going to be sending it to, which if you're at home, you probably have one printer, so that's what it is. If you're at work, you might have multiple printers, and then you need to make sure that you have the correct one selected. And then the settings, that's where it gets more interesting. So the first option is to print active sheets. If I click on print active sheets, right now we have print active sheets, entire workbook, and selection are the three choices. So print active sheets means I was looking at this exact sheet, aka the chart, before I went and clicked on file print. So that's why it's only printing that sheet. If I choose print entire workbook, that will print every single sheet. So you can see now we've changed it to 3 pages because it's printing those ABCs right there from that very first sheet that we did. It's printing our chart, because we inserted that as its own separate tab, and then, or its own separate sheet, I'm sorry. And then lastly, it's doing the monthly expenses spreadsheet as well, because that's its own separate worksheet, okay? So make sure that you have selected what you actually want in here before you actually do print, okay? Print selection is if I click, hold, and drag on the actual, like, let's say I was on this spreadsheet and I click, hold, and drag and select only a small chunk of it. If I go then to print and do print selection, it's only going to print whatever I have highlighted, okay? Pages is where you can change the number of, not the number of pages, sorry, which pages are printing. So if I only wanted pages 1 through 2, so in here I would type in 1 and then to 2. Or let's say I only wanted pages 2 to 3. I would click in here, type in 2, click in here, type in 3. Okay, let's just do that. Say that's the only ones I want, 2 to 3. So then it's only going to be printing 2 pages. Okay, printed page 2 and page 3. Collated is basically the order that it's going to be in. So collated, if I print multiple copies of it, we'll print page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, and so on, and then start over again. Uncollated will print page 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 for however many copies that I requested, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2 for however many copies I requested, and so on. Okay. Collated is typically how you want it, which is why that's set to the default. And then the rest of these things are pretty much the things that we saw with the page layout, which is changing the orientation, you know, portrait to landscape or vice versa, changing the size of paper, changing the margins. And then the last little bit is the scaling. So if you wanted multiple sheets on one page, you could do that in here, okay? It's not something that you're gonna use super commonly, but it's worth pointing out, I guess, is my point. All right, so I'm gonna go back. And the last thing we're gonna talk about is just a reminder to how to open a file. So I'm gonna close out of this by clicking on the X at the top right-hand corner. Because we haven't saved it since I made like this chart and etc., I'm going to click on save because yes, I do want to save it that way. All right, so one way that you can do opening a file is, in this case, we know that it's Excel, so we're going to go back to the start menu again, and go to all apps and open Excel again. And you can see it's in the recent right here. We're going to pretend that it's not, just so you get a full idea of it. So if you don't see it listed in here, you want to click on Open Other Workbooks, and then make sure that you click on Browse. And that'll bring up this window to give you choices as to where you want to actually retrieve it from. I'm sorry, I lost the word there for a second. So in this case, if you remember, we saved it to the sent-in USB, the flash drive, and we named it monthly expenses. There it is. If I click on that and then click on open, and there it is, my final, or the final spreadsheet, sorry. All right, okay. Alrighty, so I hope you learned a couple of additional tips that you might not have known about Excel before. Please feel free, if you have any questions, to email us at library@oakcreekwi.org. Any emails that come through that are related to this, I will get, and I will answer as quickly as I am able to. Okay. All right, so hopefully I will see you for the next one, which is Microsoft PowerPoint. All right, have a good day.